Welcome to Scramble Game Show. Today, my show will be on foreign policy. And I want to entitle this show with the name, Should Americans Speak Out About U.S. Foreign Policy? It's not a usual topic for our show, but I think if you watch through this, you will understand why it is right now important for us to discuss this kind of issue. Let me organize this hour, starting with a short story and then leading into some of the discussions about the issue. The short story, let me try to pick an interesting personality, and many of you probably know her. I will show the picture first. Now, this picture is an actress. Her name, of course, you probably know right away, is Jane Fonda. She is very famous in many ways. She's talented, an actress, made a lot of good movies and also won a lot of awards. But probably mostly you associate with her is her political activity, which will lead to our sort of discussion today. Now, let's first, examine a little bit about her background. She was actually born in December 21st, 1937. So she's right now, I would say, 75 years old now. But she's very active in many ways. And in fact, she was recently just wrote a book. Okay. Now, in her career as a movie star, she made many good movies. I cannot really remember and name them. But however, the awards she won was Academy Awards, 2 of them, and she also won the Emmy Award and the Golden Award and so forth. Speaks volume about her talent as an actress. But she was also very, politically active. She was most known for the Vietnam War. And one of the things that she did, which became kind of a controversy, was that she actually went to Vietnam and made a lot of statements. And this activity and hurted the U.S. war, of course, the soldiers there. Now, here's a picture. This is probably one of the famous pictures that she was sitting with North Vietnam soldiers in an anti-tank type of battlefield. And the statements, she of course denounced the American war is not, right, and so forth. And this kind of activity, of course, hurt American troops. Particularly, not only they use this kind of thing as a propaganda, then they use this, against American troops for the morale and soldiers over there, and this certainly is not good. And that's the reason she became a controversy. Later on, she wrote books about herself, an autobiography. I think she wrote in the year 2000 or 2001. And later on, she also wrote a book called Prime Time in 2011. Now, her political activity, anti-war, is nothing wrong. I'm sure a lot of people are not, for war, usually is against war. But the question is how you do it and when you do it, where you do it. Now, this is where it will lead to our story. And my question to you is, should Americans speak out about U.S. foreign policy? Well, my conclusion is certainly we should, and should be doing so as early as possible, not till the end when the war is already started, when troops are engaged. Then the activity could become non-patriotic or even considered a treason. In fact, Jane Fonda was in one of her book signing ceremony in Kansas City, was spit on by I think a Navy veteran who was chewing tobacco because he was so angry that she had done these things when the war was going on. Okay, now this story it probably is familiar to you, and she is familiar to you. She's not only a movie star, author, and so on, and she's also into movement for women's rights, particularly in the film industry and media. And those kind of activities are all positive in a sense that you believe in something, you do something. But the controversy part, people call her traitor. It focused on the issue is when, where, how you are expressing your opinion about your country or our country foreign policy. Okay, so this is why today I would like to bring this topic into my show as a main discussion, and for many reasons. One of the reasons is very recent, as you probably know, in the news, this so-called North Korea nuclear threat to attack United States. I mean, certainly nobody wants to be attacked, and the United States certainly don't want to be attacked. So those kind of things will lead to our thinking. What is our government doing? What is our foreign policy? And why would other country wanted to attack United States, and so on and so forth? Now, I think the more the American people thinking about these issues, more American people speak out about these, will, in a true democratic country sense, would influence our foreign policy. Otherwise, foreign policy will be done as a secrecy and dictatorship. We don't want that, okay? And that's the reason we actually sometimes we against those dictatorship in the countries that really perform foreign policy by dictators. All right? Okay. Now, let's look at a picture, okay? Since we mentioned about nuclear threat, okay, this picture, this photograph here, is probably not necessarily up to date, but it's good enough, close, right, to show different countries the nuclear weapons they possess. As you can see that on top here, okay, Russia is top, 8,500, okay. United States is second, 7,700. France at 300. China, 240. United Kingdom, 225. And then comes down to Pakistan is about 90 to 110, and India closely follow, is 90 to 100. And Israel is about 60 to 80, okay? And North Korea is labeled there less than 10. Apparently, the number is not certain or accurate, okay? I mean, certainly that list shows the huge stockpiles of nuclear weapons are, of course, in these big countries, okay? Now, this posed a question to us is that we don't want any other country to have nuclear weapon because we fear to, being attacked, or a nuclear weapon will lead to a nuclear war. But we already have this many stockpile of nuclear weapons. So isn't it, sort of wise from American citizen point of view, how we conduct our foreign policy? to deal with all of these countries because they all have nuclear weapons already, okay? And later on, we shall sort of get into this U.S. policy towards, say, for example, Russia, China, and so forth. Okay, now let me move on to another picture. Now, this is where now today it's in the news, okay? And I am blocking a picture which the person, hey, somebody should remove my picture for a while to show this, the leader in North Korea. His name is Kim Jong-un, right? Now, this collection of photographs and so forth shows that North Korea is eagerly developing nuclear weapons and missiles. And they even openly state that it's intended to attack the United States, since the United States is putting pressure on the blockade against North Korea, right? Now, this situation is not good. Okay, let me see whether I can show you another graph, which may take a little while to explain. Now, I hope you can see this graph. Basically, put North Korea is in the center of this map and draw these semicircles of distance, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 1 is 1,000 kilometers, 2 is 2,000 kilometers, actually 2,200 kilometers, 3 is 4,000 kilometers, and 4 is 6,000 kilometers. Okay, for you that want to know miles, kilometers and miles is 1.7 kilometers a mile. Okay, so you divide those numbers by 1.7, you get the miles. But from this map, you can see United States actually is not in the range, right? Look, closest here, Canada's here. Okay, the South America's here. So, in terms of capability of North Korea, we are not really in the range of their attack. Okay, so I think even President Obama sort of made a statement. I mean, the North Korea probably needs at least a year or more years to even develop a capability to launch attack. Okay, however, this is interesting to see that the nuclear threat is certainly within this region. Most closely, actually, is Japan, right? Tokyo is right in the first ring. And China also, although North Korea and China probably not likely to attack China because during the Korean War, as you know, North Korea thought for China's help, and China actually sent a lot of troops to help them to fight the Korean War and lost a lot of lives. So there's a sort of debt of North Korea that owing to China in terms of lending their hand. Now, we probably don't have time to go into those kind of discussion about why those kind of wars started, what is the ideological conflict and so forth. But many people know about it. Okay, it's the time right after the Second World War, and there's a sort of a redistribution of power, and the superpower is trying to influence the world, and particularly Russia, United States, and so on. So now, since United States pretty much sort of occupied Japan, I mean, at least in a sort of influence sense, and of course Okinawa and so forth, and Korea and Russia and China as a communist country feel like they were really sort of being surrounded and being threatened. So they want to have Korea to at least be a stopping point. Now that's the reason now North-South Korea now fought so long and then established the so-called 38-degree truce line. Okay, anyhow, this picture it shows that the threat certainly is far more towards say within the range in Korea to attack Japan versus say United States. Okay, all right. Now let me see whether I go to another picture. Okay, if I don't acknowledge, I thank these people that are having these graphs that we could use. I mean, many of these are from the internet, public information, and so forth. Although, it's very helpful for people who want to understand things, and these public information really is helpful. Now, this picture shows now the military bases that's within this North Korea missile, capability. As we saw that big circle we draw, let's say 6,000 kilometers and so forth. You can see this is North Korea. Japan is here. Now, these little airplanes or Navy, anchor sign, they are representations of U.S. military bases. As you can see, U.S. has, these Air Force military base and the Navy bases in Japan itself and in Okinawa. Okay, Okinawa, as you know, it was a independent country that it was attacked and captured or occupied by Japan before the Second World War, when the Second World War ended, Japan, of course, unconditionally surrendered, and the Okinawa was supposed to be returned to independence, but it ended up to be a trustee ship by United States. United States has been sort of controlling that area until later on decided to give the administration rights back to Japan, which is mind-boggling itself because I don't see necessarily the logic for doing that, nor justice for doing that. But anyhow, again, these are the reasons I think sometimes we need to understand history, we need to understand foreign policy in order to be able to speak out and influence in foreign policy. Otherwise, the foreign policy may be in a wrong direction, leading to war that eventually we don't like. In fact, we may be hurting. So, now, as you can see, these military bases, okay, and there's also shown in South Korea as well, okay, those Air Force base, Navy base, okay. Now, this is the previous drawing as showing the 4 rings from the North Korea nuclear capability if you draw these circles, all right? So, if, let's say we forget about who you are as a citizenship and so forth, just as a, Martians look at this, map, probably will see that North Korea is certainly more under threat than anybody else, or reverse, right? Because all these surrounding bases are surrounding North Korea. Now, do all these bases have nuclear power capability? I would certainly believe so, because later on we'll see. I mean, U.S. has so much nuclear capability and weapons. Where are they? So forth. They may be all top secret, but you could imagine if you have submarines and you may have submarine, nuclear missiles. You have airplanes. You can have airplanes with bombs, that is nuclear bombs. All right. Now, Okay. Where's my mouse? Okay, now this is a picture, shows Iran. As you know, another area we have very concerned about is Iran is developing nuclear capability, and in fact we're in war with because of that. And this picture shows that the so-called enriched uranium, which is the material that used for making nuclear bombs, okay? And this material has to be purified in order to, use it for bomb. And the enriched in uranium and these sort of graphs here show the bottom darker lines is so-called operating, means nuclear weapon is already operating, is ready to be used, versus installed is just being installed, not in operation. Okay, so as you can see, since February 12, this 2012, okay, the in operation is pretty much flat at 696, but the installment is increased about 3 times, triple. And that's why we are concerned about all this nuclear development in Iran. Okay, now I don't have anything similar that plots North Koreans, but obviously North Korea's activity is also enhancing, particularly recently, as we see from the news that testing of a nuclear test and missiles, test and so forth. Okay. Now, this picture, okay, let's go back to this list which we showed. This various country has things, but actually did not list Iran or other countries. Okay, there's something to be said about people are developing. Okay, now we can go back to visits of Pakistan. Pakistan is our ally, supposedly. Okay, but they are holding this much nuclear weapon, and India. So sometimes you wonder, our foreign policy or the relationship with countries somehow not necessarily leading to a peaceful outcome or leading to conditions that may turn into threat to United States. That is not good, right? I am not pretending that we citizens all have smart solutions or understand how to do everything, but I think we need to understand as much as possible, because I don't think people making those decisions, not necessarily all super smart. I don't even think smartness is necessarily the only ingredient to making such decisions, because sometimes the steps takes time leading to a consequence. It's not IQ alone could really sort of predict. There's too many factors involved. Okay, for example, assumptions. When after Second World War, the communism countries, and of course, there's assumption that the communist is definitely want to expand as an expansionist. So we want to stop them. And Russia, with that time Soviet Union, certainly is very much a expansionist country. And following that, we had a Cold War, and the Cold War eventually actually succeeded because the Soviet Union now is collapsed. Okay, now hindsight, whether that's absolutely correct path or not, it's hard to say. There are many books talk about this. Fortunately, the Cold War ended. The Soviet Union sort of collapsed, but still, you see that Russia has 8,500 nuclear weapons, far more even than the United States. And is U.S. continuing assuming they are the enemies? In fact, U.S. now recently is turning the direction towards China, considering China as the, arch-enemy. In fact, partnering with Japan, who's supposed to be, by the Second World War sort of a agreement, to be a peaceful country, never invade any other country again. Okay, later on we'll see. Although Japan is not listed here as nuclear weapon owner, but you'll be surprised how much military strength, power is with Japan. As a peaceful country that surrendered after the Second World War, admitted their aggression, although now they're trying to deny that, rewrite history. They're denying that even the Tokyo court that sentenced the general to be hanged because that the Second World War was atrocious. But now they're going to saying that's the victor's court not justified for Japanese to accept. So all of this is very strange. And all of this are elements that are brewing. Any foreign policy must consider, must sort of evaluate. Now, if we look at the situation and say, okay, that's assuming China is fast rising economically, we are assuming they are the enemy. We pick partners and try to, do this sort of confinement and curtailment or whatever you call it, and then making threats and this and that lead to threat, confrontation to confrontation, where it goes. Okay? I am now raising these questions because this North Korea war and the Vietnam War, all these wars, Iraq War and so forth, don't they give us enough experience and lessons to think about, hey, we probably have to be careful how we conduct our foreign policy, okay, in order to avoid wars rather than encouraging or agitating into a war situation. All right. Now, let's review a little bit more about the military situation. Okay. Now, interesting. I show this picture just to say that I'm going to quote some numbers about Air Force, air sort of power. Okay, it's very interesting, and I actually have written it down.